The Mecklenburg County election debates are a service of WTVI, Mecklenburg County, and the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The views and opinions expressed in these debates are those of the candidates and do not necessarily represent the views of WTVI, its management, Mecklenburg County, or the League of Women Voters.
WTVI PBS Charlotte and the League of Women Voters present Election Debate 2015.
And hello, I'm Jeff Park with WTVI PBS Charlotte. We are delighted you could join us for the Mecklenburg County Board of Education at-large debate, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Now, there are 9 candidates in this race. There are 3 open seats in this nonpartisan race. Questions for the debate were provided by the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. The questions were not shared in advance with the candidates. I will call on the candidates in random order to answer the questions. The candidates will have 1 minute to respond, and if you would like to challenge a fellow candidate, you may do so by raising your yellow challenge card. You'll have 30 seconds to challenge a candidate. There are no opening statements, but each candidate will have the opportunity to make a closing statement, a 30-second closing statement, at the end of this debate. And now we will meet the candidates for Mecklenburg County Board of Education at large, and we begin with Angela Ambrose, Janine Bryant, Larry Baumgartner, Elise Dashu, Erica Ellis Stewart, Levester Flowers, Mary McCrae, Jeremy Stevenson, and our 9th candidate, Amelia Stinson Wesley, was unable to be with us due to an anticipated illness. So we will begin with the debate. The first question is simply a yes-no response, and we'll start with you, Angela. The question is, do you support and will you vote for a search committee for new superintendent? Yes or no?
Yes.
Janine Bryant?
Yes.
Larry Baumgartner?
Absolutely.
Elise Dashu?
Yes, I will.
Erica Ellis Stewart?
Yes.
Levester Flowers?
Yes.
Mary McCrae?
Yes.
Jeremy Stevenson?
No.
All right. Our second question is, what are your priorities in selecting the next superintendent, and what characteristics do you think are important for a superintendent to have? And again, you will have 1 minute to respond, and we will begin with Janine Bryant.
I believe that our community needs a superintendent that is very much coalition-minded and very much thinking about all of the needs of the children in CMS by understanding the demographics of our community, understanding the history here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and also developing a deep sense of community connection with what our community needs in a leader. They should have a connection to the region and the district and our school policy, and they should also be able to advocate across citywide, but also at a larger legislature level for the state.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bryant. Larry Baumgartner?
My idea is different. I think we've been having our board micromanage the system for the last 20 plus years. I would like us to go ahead and put a proposal out where we say that we want you to come in with based on your research, what your vision would be for Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools over the next 10 years. We have hired too many superintendents, let them come in, try to handle this Frankenstein that we've created, and it's just not working. That's why we need to have a new vision, someone that comes in, even if it's, Ann Helms, she can actually be in that same search committee. I'd be happy to see that too.
All right, thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Elise Dashu?
CMS is the largest and one of the largest, most dynamic, most complex organizations in our region. And the success of our school district impacts everything in our region. So we need the best possible person to run this district. We need someone who has the nuts and bolts skills to run a large urban suburban district, who can continue our trajectory of raising the graduation rate, doing better with test scores, and closing the achievement gap. And we need someone who has an aptitude for engaging the community, building community engagement in our district, harnessing political will to support our schools, and someone who understands Raleigh and can operate in that environment.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dashu. Erica Ellis Stewart, your reply.
Sure. What I'm looking for in the next superintendent is someone who is a K-12 leader who has a track record in making sure that all students learn at high levels. This person needs to come in and have the business acumen to run the 3rd largest employer in our region, the 17th largest district in the country. They have to be able to be the chief lobbyist to go to the General Assembly to lobby on behalf of the needs of the school system as well. This person needs to be a unifying figure for our community, not someone who will bring us separate into separate corners, but someone who knows how to look at all of the constituents in our county and really work towards making sure that people can have their voices heard. I think that the next superintendent needs to be someone that can work directly with the board to form a very strong governance team and to build that level of support that's needed for public education in our community. I'm looking forward to the selection process and want to make sure that we have full engagement from our community and that their input and engagement is there and making a difference.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lester Flowers, please.
Thank you so much. I would be looking for a visionary, one that is supportive of the board's goals and objectives. Also, I would be looking for an individual that's respectful of the opinions of all the stakeholders in CMS, be they parents, be their co-workers, or be there the legislature in Raleigh that's working with the board. And also, finally, a great communicator of the school's goals and objectives as we move forward with especially pupil assignment.
All right, thank you, Mr. Flowers. Mary McCrae.
Yes, I would look for a person who is capable of taking us beyond K-12, but also looking at pre-K and post-secondary. Having that connection there, because that is where we are sorely lacking sometimes when we think about K-12. But also I want a person who is centered around the value of our employees, our students, and the community and the parents that we serve in this district. Also a person who is a zealot for public education and is willing to go to bat for this district on the level, at the county level, the state level, and nationally, because all three of those entities affect what we do here in CMS. So I'm just looking for that person who is willing to stand up for public education.
All right, thank you, Ms. McCrae. Jeremy Stevenson.
Thank you, Jeff. I strongly feel that Ann Clark is the best candidate we have available right now. Her resume is impeccable. She's won national awards. She's been Principal of the Year nationally. In her 30 years with the district, she has touched so many people personally as I travel around the county. There are so many people crying out, "Keep Ann Clark." If we do a national search again, we've done that twice before, and the last two superintendents left rather abruptly. That would cost approximately somewhere around $50,000 to $100,000 and take a significant amount of time. That money is much better spent in the classroom. I feel Ann Clark is the superior candidate. I am definitely open to a public conversation to those people who have anything to say about this, and I'm open to that dialogue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Angela Ambrose, your reply.
Yes, I am looking for someone who is a true leader, someone who will advocate for teachers and employees within CMS. I'm also looking for someone who will get out there and listen to the community and search and meet the needs of the community. I would like to say I am a supporter of Ann Clark. However, I would like to interview other candidates. I'm looking for someone who is invested in Charlotte, who's invested in Mecklenburg County, someone with roots and understand what's happening here in the city. So I'm definitely looking for a candidate, most of all, that has strong leadership skills and is not afraid to get out there and fight for Charlotte.
All right, thank you. Our second question in the debate, third question rather, what is your top priority for a new pupil reassignment plan, and how do you propose to achieve it? So once again, what is your top priority for a new pupil reassignment plan, and how do you propose to achieve it? And Larry Baumgartner, we begin with you, sir.
Actually, my ideas for that is, I don't understand why we allow schools to be good and bad in Charlotte, North Carolina. If we had all schools working, if they started working tomorrow, can you imagine all the groups and all the money that would be lost? The fact is we need to focus on one thing, and that's education in the schools. I've volunteered in the schools for the last 16 years, folks, and I have seen when I first started, you would have maybe 15 kids in there that had the fire in their eyes, and it kept dwindling down. And I'm lucky now if I go into a class and I see 2 or 3. We've got something going on with education in our schools and something going on with education in our system. And being an independent, I'm not going to bring any politics to the school board. I'm actually going to bring nothing but pure education to the schools from now on. I know how to spend $1.5 billion. I know how to budgets. I had my own 2 companies. I know what we're looking for.
All right, thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Elise Dashu.
We have schools in our district that are tremendously successful, where children are thriving, and that must be maintained and strengthened. We also have a lot of schools in our district where poverty is so concentrated that the odds are stacked against success. And as a community, we have got to address this. I believe that it's the right thing to do, and it is in our self-interest to address this. So both of those statements are true. One does not cancel out the other. We can do both, and we must do both.
All right, and again, the question is, what is your top priority for the new pupil reassignment plan, and how do you propose to achieve it? And we go to my left, Erica Ellis Stewart, for your reply.
I think this is an opportunity for us to make every school in the district a school of excellence. We have some schools that are doing well. We have some schools that are overcrowded. We have other schools that have high concentrations of poverty. The answer to this question will be multifaceted, but we have to be thoughtful in our approach as a board. We have to listen to the community and have their input, but we also have to do what's in the best interest of all students. This plan will really give us an opportunity to make sure that our school system is serving the communities that are here in an appropriate fashion with efficiency. We do need to focus on things like proximity and stability, but we also have to focus on diversity for our students. I think that the conversation will go on. We've given ourselves a year to figure this out, and we don't want to rush the process, and we definitely want to have the community input.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ellis Stewart. Mr. Levester Flowers, your reply.
Okay, my first priority would be expansion of new and innovative magnet schools. Secondly, bridging and maintaining strong neighborhood schools, and also ensuring within school zones that students actually attend the schools that are closest to their home. We have instances now in CMS where students live in a school zone, and a high school, for example, in South Charlotte, they may be 2 miles from their house, but they're being assigned to a school maybe 8 or 10 miles. We need to tweak that to the point that you are actually attending the school that's closest to you in proximity to your home. If we do this with the expansion of magnet schools and they are created, we will bring about the diversity that the community is longing on a voluntary basis. If we don't do this, then parents will opt to go to charter schools, private schools, and Fort Mill and other entities.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers.
Thank you.
Mary McRae, your reply.
Jeff, I firmly believe that we could do much better with our student assignment plan if we are able to work collectively and collaboratively with our city and county leaders. We need them to work with us in improving our neighborhoods where our schools sit. A neighborhood is no better than the school that's there. Our schools can't be any better than the neighborhood where they sit. So this is why I advocate for getting city and county leaders on board with us and making sure that the improvements are put in place for the neighborhoods. And then we as a district, we can put the improvements in there as a board. But we can't bear all of this on our shoulders because of some of the problems that our neighborhoods present for us. Also, I feel like we have got to make sure that schools are great for all children. And I agree with Mr. Flowers. Magnet programs, the expansion of it is one way we can do that. But also, we've got to get to the root cause of what's happening in our neighborhoods.
Thank you. Jeremy Stevenson, your reply.
Thank you, Jeff. The Charlotte Observer asked this exact same question last June, July, and 4 of the candidates out of a series of factors specifically identified the one word diversity as the most important factor in student assignment, more important than proximity or stability or even budget. I, at that time, said stability and proximity were the most important thing, and I still think those are the most important thing. Graduation rates are at an all-time high. The achievement gap between black students and white students is closing very rapidly. And we don't need major change, and I don't think major changes are wanted in the community.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Angela Ambrose, your reply.
As a community leader and the president of Villa Heights, I know a lot about reaching out to the community. I think that we first need to see what the community and what the neighborhoods want. As far as an assignment plan, I honestly think that as a candidate, someone if elected to the board, what I would do is use that position to advocate more to the county and the city to provide more mixed income housing in these urban neighborhoods and throughout Charlotte. I think that we're always going to have high concentrations of poverty because the neighborhoods make up their home schools. I think that a way that we naturally start to break up concentrations in poverty is to put in a lot of these schools that have these high concentrations partial magnet programs. I'm not for full magnet programs. I want the kids in the neighborhoods to be able to connect with their parents, to be able to connect with their neighbors and remain at their schools. But I think that if we put a highly competitive partial magnet in these programs and let parents have choice and decide if they want to come into these inner city schools, and give it back to the parents and the community to choose, and not so much CMS trying to choke down pupil assignment.
Thank you. Janine Bryant, your reply?
Thank you, Jeff. I think we have an awesome opportunity in this community, and I named diversity as the top priority for the district, mainly because our schools are resegregated. And if you go into the schools and you have an opportunity to actually sit in the classrooms, you can see this very obviously. And we have to make a decision as a community whether or not we want to maintain segregated schooling. And if that we don't, and we're not satisfied with the status quo, then we would have to be willing to address diversity at all levels, including housing policy, including thinking about how to create safer and more diverse neighborhoods, but also what can we do as a school district in involving community and parent input, and what will do we have to create. One way is, I think, partial magnets. I think that's a very obvious next step, and it gives us a place to start. But I think we also have to consider a long-term policy and a long-term strategy that can really help us grow.
All right, Janine Bryant, thank you. Our fourth question for this debate: has segregation hurt CMS? And if so, how and what should be done? Has segregation hurt CMS? And if so, how and what should be done? And for the first response, we go to Elise Dashu.
So the first part of that question is, has segregation hurt CMS? And in that question, you have to acknowledge that that our schools have resegregated economically, and in some ways racially too. There is a lot of evidence, there are mountains of evidence that tell us that students do better when they go to school together. I do not see forced busing in the old-fashioned way as a viable solution for today's challenges, but as a community, we really do need to acknowledge this and find ways to address it. So I see magnets as an option to bring back diversity, and I'm also intrigued with neighborhoods that are diversifying, but their schools are not yet diversifying. How can we make those schools attractive to all of the residents of those neighborhoods? But I don't see busing as an option, and that's a rumor that has been grown up in our community that we need to calm down a little bit.
Thank you. Miss Erica Ellis Stewart, your reply.
It's very interesting. If you look at our schools today, there is racial and socioeconomic isolation, and there is resegregation that is there. And schools are really meant to help prepare young people for the world that they will step into as adults and young adults. We need to make sure that we're giving them opportunities to work in diverse groups, to be around people who are different from them, whether it's their socioeconomic background, their race, their ideology, their thought processes. But this is not a conversation about busing. This is a conversation about how do we make our schools better for every child that's there. We need to make sure that across our school district, we are making sure that every child has exposure to rigor, that every child has exposure to high levels of academic expectation, and that every classroom has a highly qualified teacher at the helm, in addition to working on this issue of how our schools have resegregated.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ellis Stewart. Mr. Levester Flowers, your reply.
I would say that segregation has tempered our school system ability to become a world-class system. I don't believe that busing should be utilized to bring about diversity in any pupil or student assignment program. Once again, I'm an opponent of utilization of the magnet program, being innovated with clusters of magnet schools throughout the system with an effective bus system. If we do that, we will bring about the unification of communities, the diversity that we need on a voluntary basis. This is the way to go. If we do it any other way, as I indicated before, parents have options to go to private schools, schools across the county lines and charter schools. We don't want to do that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Flowers. Ms. McCrae.
Our schools have been resegregated. Our schools are a reflection of the communities in which they sit. And it has hurt our schools because when you look at a segregated school, there are many more needs that are in that school. And some of those needs, we just don't have the funding to fully put in there, invest in that school, and make sure that those needs are met. So it is a thing that we're going to have to work together collectively with the city and our county to change the reflection of our neighborhoods and therefore change the reflection of our schools so that our schools can improve. When you have the mixed income housing, you're going to have mixed income schools, and that will get rid of that segregation that we have there in our schools that are presently sitting there.
All right, thank you, Ms. McCrae. Jeremy Stevenson.
Thank you. I've spent a lot of time at Bruns Academy, and for the last 8 years, I've also been a volunteer as a guardian ad litem and done home visits in some of the poorest houses in this county. And Ms. McCrae is absolutely right. These children have traumas outside of school, and those are very difficult to solve inside the classroom. But when you do put a school with 99% poverty, that does create problems for children to be able to achieve. I'm not certain what the solution is to that, but we do have some examples in our community. Olympic High School is a Title I neighborhood school that in 2005 was operating at 53% proficiency and is now almost at 90% proficiency. There are other models in our community. Ann Clark's example of reading for 1 hour a week is also a way to connect outsiders, plug them into a child, let them show what's going on there, and be an advocate on a one-on-one basis for that child.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Angela Ambrose, your reply.
I agree. Our schools a lot of them are segregated. But we first got to look at the roots of the problem. And a lot of those problems don't lie necessarily on CMS's shoulders. I think that we need to reach out more to the business communities and the communities. We also need to reach out to a lot of professionals and retired seniors to come back into these schools and work with these children. And we've got to expose them to other opportunities. As long as their parents, quite frankly, a lot of them, parents don't have the income, and they're always going to be in the areas that are around people who make around the same amount or close to those environments. I think that a way that we try to break that up is to first, again, go back to those neighborhoods, figure how we can invest in those neighborhoods, pull young professionals back into the schools. A lot of professionals here in Charlotte don't have children, but would love to invest and come into these urban schools or schools throughout Charlotte. I think that one of the things that we really have to look at when we mainly look at segregated schools, we need to focus more so on kids and their growth and getting them able to focus and function at the schools that they are in now, and not so much the priority needs to be diversity.
Thank you. Janine Bryan, rather.
Janine, I really appreciate this question, mainly because when we recognize that our schools are resegregated, which every candidate can, we have to ask ourselves, is it actually preparing our students for the lives that they're going to live beyond school? So a lot of people harken back to the 21st century skills that are directly related to what business leaders in our communities across the country wanted to see about creativity and collaboration, working across difference, critical skill thinking. And quite honestly, we're not serving to prepare our students. We're not creating a pipeline of leadership when we know that we are underserving our students and they're in highly segregated environments. That's not what the world looks like, and that's not what Charlotte looks like, and it's not what we aspire to be. If we're actually preparing to be a globalizing city, then our students should be prepared by learning to work with and live with indifference so that they can function in society not only as thinkers that are critically able to do that, but also as leaders that know how to work across difference, that know how to think beyond what they are used to seeing every day. This resegregation has actually impacted teachers, students, and parents, and it's going to continue to do that unless we find some urgency in our issue.
Thank you, Janine Bryan. Larry Baumgartner, your reply.
Yeah, being a native Charlottean, I've noticed that when we grew these big banks and all the different things downtown, the reason that we did so was because of families. We had talent that wanted to come in because we had low crime, we had good schools, and the taxes were pretty decent at that time. So let's fast forward to what we have today. We currently have schools that you say are segregated. They represent as she said earlier, they represent the neighborhoods that they live in. And the problem is these are filled with CMS graduates, folks. CMS graduates that we did back in those days said, we have to keep doing this change around. We have to keep people moving here. Why don't we just focus on one thing, and that's education? Because all schools do the same thing. It's just what is being utilized. It's like a McDonald's that you don't like to go to. You might like to go to the other one, but you don't like to go to this one. Let's get the other McDonald's working also.
All right, thank you, Larry Baumgartner. Our next question, what would you do to convince the county commission to better fund our schools? What would you do to convince the county commission to better fund our schools? And we begin to my left, Erica Ellis Stewart.
I think we first have to have the conversation that public education truly is an economic development tool. When businesses come to this community, they're looking at our schools not only for their children, but they're looking at our school system to determine, are we able to produce the workers that they will need now and into the future? We have to make sure that we are providing career technical education that prepares students to step into the jobs of today as well as the emerging markets. But we also have to make sure that we are providing them with a world-class education for those who want to go to college 2-year or 4-year. As we have a conversation with the county commission, it's not only about our operating budget and making sure that we're paying teachers what we need, asking for an increase to the local supplement, but it's also asking them for those capital dollars that will allow us to meet the growth that's coming into the school system each year. We have anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 new students on an annual basis, and last time we had a bond referendum, we only had $295 million, and we shared that with Central Piedmont. We have to make sure that our county commissioners are partners in the priorities of education in this community.
Thank you. Need to cut you off, I'm sorry. Mr. Levester Flowers, your reply?
I came from a career in corporate America as an investment advisor, and one of the key buzzwords, if you will, that we used was ROI, return of investments. We have to ensure and make sure the county and citizens and industry all understand that if they make an investment in youth at an early age, make these kids productive, make them citizens who work, then eventually if they stay in Mecklenburg County, they will become taxpayers. If they become taxpayers, then they are adding to the bottom line. If we do it differently, what's going to happen is they're going to find themselves down on 3rd Street where the jail is, or either where the courthouse is. Where do you want to invest your money? In stronger schools or in the penitentiary system for these kids?
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Mary McCrae, your reply.
It is all of the above that Ms. Ellis Stewart said and Mr. Flowers, but one of the most important things we have to do is get our commissioners to understand that our schools are not just products of the state. They are products also of Mecklenburg County. And if we can change that mindset of our commissioners, I think they would become more invested in what we are doing here in CMS. Because I see all the time on their website how they tout the value of the school district here. So my thing is, put your money where your touting is if you're so proud of our district. And also, just getting our commissioners to come out and visit our schools, not just the schools that are in their district, but schools that aren't in their district, so they can see a sampling of all of our schools and the employees that we have in our district.
All right, thank you, Mary McCrae. Jeremy Stevenson.
Thank you. Part of the reason I'm running for school board is our neighborhood homeschool, Lansdowne Elementary, built in 1956, was found functionally obsolete by an engineering study in approximately 2010, but was not on the 2013 bond list. And that frankly made no sense to me at all. So I started asking questions of people like my council member, Matthew Ridenhour, and Jim Puckett, who now both formally endorse me. We will consistently be talking about the word advocacy, and this question goes directly to that. I am formally endorsed by Jim Puckett and Matthew Ridenhour. I have strong working relationships with Pat Cotham and Trevor Fuller. That in and of itself makes me a stronger advocate for these issues.
All right, Jeremy Stevenson, thank you. We have a challenge from this side from, let's see here, Elise Dashu.
I just wanted to question Mr. Stevenson on your, and since you've mentioned your relationship and your endorsement from Matthew Ridenhour, question you about your earlier history of intending to, were you originally going to run in a primary against him for county commission before you decided to run for school board?
Yeah, sure. I sat down and spoke with a number of elected officials. And this specifically was the button issue that ignited my fire about why the county commission was not doing more. And the advice I received was, don't run at large because it's a giant county. If you actually want to have your first time on the ballot, the easiest way it is to do it on a district basis in a primary. And Matthew Ridenour called me up and said, hey, if you have problems with what I'm doing, you don't need to run against me.
All right. Thank you. Your time's up. We're going to continue with a question. What will you do to convince the county commission to better fund your schools? And we left off with Angela Ambrose. So your reply.
I think a lot of the other candidates have made good points. And so pretty much what they said. But I would like to add is that we're just going to have to lobby for them more to come into the schools, visit the schools, and get a good idea of how these schools function. Another thing is I would like to hold the county responsible as well. Charlotte has a lot of growth as a real estate broker. I'm seeing a lot of growth in Charlotte. And the county doesn't go after developers and new developers to contribute more money to the schools. And so I would advocate with those county commissioners to figure out a way to create more money for the county so that we can have more money to give to CMS.
All right, thank you. Janine Bryant.
So I was a classroom teacher at a Title I school, and every day going to school, it was quite obvious to me that the building and the teachers needed additional support. I think that when we talk loosely about shifting the mindset of the county commissioners, it literally means that they need to follow a teacher for a day. It literally means that they need to have their feet on the ground in our schools to see both the need for operational support for the schools, but also for the way that we could expand the budget for CMS to actually give additional supplemental support for our teachers. I think that many people will say that this is a state issue and that our legislation is underfunding on purpose and defunding public traditional schools. But I think we as a community can set a different priority for Charlotte-Mecklenburg and be oriented towards supporting our students from cradle to college. In reality, that can be a mindset shift for all of us.
All right, Janine Bryant, thank you. Larry Bumgarner, your reply.
As an independent, I have to actually go out and look for the person that I'm going to vote for. And unfortunately, it's from the parties. So we pick the best of the best from the parties. And in this case, you're not going to hire just a person that has a pretty face, folks. What you're going to hire is a person that's actually going to work hard for you, that's not going to be, and I hate to say this, but it seems like we have a lot of elected officials that just seem to have abdicated their whole idea of, they're going to solve problems, and instead they become successful salespeople for bad news. And we don't need that any longer in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. We need people that will get in there, cut the budget, make some differences, show some results, and we'll get money like you wouldn't believe. I do my investments the same way, like you do, like we all do. Our IRSs, things like that. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we saying success is the only thing we have at Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools? That's the only focus.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Elise Dashew.
When you talk to voters in Mecklenburg County, there is real political will to better fund our schools so that we can pay our teachers a competitive wage, so that we can build new schools to relieve overcrowding. And our community needs to express that will to the county commissioners. And I have a solid track record of bridging that divide between the county commissioners and what the public wants. I led the effort in 2011 to push back $26 million of proposed budget cuts from the county commission because of the groundswell of support for our schools in the community. I helped to harness that groundswell and send that message to the county commission, and we saved hundreds of teacher jobs in the process. I helped to get a full-time nurse in every school, which our county commissioners funded this year for the first time ever because of that public support. And that's the missing ingredient on the school board that is driving me to offer my services in this race.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dashew. Our next question is, teachers are working at Walmart and waiting tables to pay the bills. What would you do to increase teacher pay? And for that question, the first response, we go to Mr. Levester Flowers.
One of the things that I would do would certainly lobby the state legislatures in Raleigh to make sure that they are sensitive to the needs economically of teachers. I also would lobby the county commissions to make sure that they continue with the supportive supplemental income they provide teachers. Thirdly, I would also make sure that teachers who come into CMS have a career track like we do in corporate America. You can start off as a teacher, but you need to have some defined ideas where you want to go with your career. For example, in 1 or 2 years, you might want to become a dean of the school, or you might want to be an assistant principal. And fourthly, we also need the community to be involved with doing things that will supplement teachers' income by giving them discounts when they shop or things like that. These are just a few of the examples of how we can bridge the gap with the inequity of pay that teachers are receiving now.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Mary McRae?
Jeff, I was one of those teachers that worked those extra jobs, just never at Walmart. But I did do summer school and every after-school tutorial that I could find. So I know the challenges that our teachers are facing. So one of the things I would continue to do is make sure that our county commissioners know the importance of increasing our local supplement for retention and attraction here in CMS. Also continue those steadily treks down to Raleigh and be face-to-face with our legislators, talking to them about the importance of maintaining and keeping our teachers here in North Carolina and not sending them across county lines to get extra money, but bringing our salary schedule more in line with the national level.
Thank you. Jeremy Stevenson?
Thank you. The reality is that Bev Perdue cut teacher pay in 2009, and since that date, it has been coming up, albeit not as quickly as it should. We again come back to the term advocacy, and the people we will be going to talk to in Raleigh and on the county commission are formally endorsing me. There are 100,000 teachers in North Carolina, so to raise teacher pay at the state level becomes a very large number. That becomes very difficult. I think the push point here is to the county commission is much easier on the local level. I'm a labor and employment attorney. I work with human resources professionals every day. The human resources community is very aware of what makes people leave their jobs. The Charlotte Business Journal just today had an article ranking the top 5 things that make people leave, and pay was number 5 down at the bottom. There are a lot of things that we can do to attract and retain key talent other than just pay.
Thank you, Jeremy Stevenson. Again, the question is, teachers are working at Walmart and waiting tables to pay the bills. What would you do to increase teacher pay? And we go to my right, to Angela Ambrose for your reply.
I believe that we ought to advocate more on a state level for teacher pay and support staff. I can't say enough that we need to advocate for teachers to get paid more and the support staff, bus drivers, custodians. All of these people need to pay more. They all impact our children while they're at school. And so when we advocate that, we need to advocate for pay for all of them. Another way that I would advocate for that is also forming some type of countywide card so teachers to offset some teachers' expenses while we're out there fighting to increase their pay. Reaching out to the business community, the banks, the county to reduce teachers' taxes on when they purchase a home. Reaching out to apartment buildings and just different people to say, let's honor this teacher card where we can support our teachers, and while we're out there advocating for more pay, let them feel it now, some of those discounts to kind of help them. I meet a lot of teachers in Harris Teeter, Walmart, and a lot of them, they're working hard, but I can see that they're discouraged. And if we as North Carolinians or people here in Charlotte really realize the importance of school, we have got to get those teachers more money, and we have got to.
Thank you, Ms. Ambrose. Janine Bryant, your reply? Teachers
have reached a morale low point for obvious reasons. It's not just their salary, it's how they're being treated at school. And it's actually, I think, the larger issue is that teachers aren't being treated as professionals. They aren't being treated with the level of professional dignity. Teaching is the only profession in which you are expected to sacrifice. You're expected to work 8 hours, not necessarily have a bathroom break, and eat your lunch in 20 minutes standing up. And no one blinks an eye at that. And so here we are asking questions about how to create this pipeline for teachers and recruit more teachers, but the reality is we have to think of the entire spectrum, including recruitment, retention, and professional development. We have to respect our veteran teachers for all the work and the many years that they've put in. We have to respect that newcoming teachers need to be able to live. We are expecting them to live at levels of living poor in many cases if they have children. So ultimately, I think we can supplement and create things like opportunity culture, which we see at some of our schools, where teachers can really see that their growth and development is being supported at the district level, but we can do that at a district-wide level.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Larry Baumgartner, your reply.
Okay. I challenge everyone to go to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department website. If you notice, the police actually make about the same salaries as teachers in Charlotte, so maybe we've got a bigger problem on salaries than we do with just teachers here in Mecklenburg County. That being said, what do I do for it? I've created a website a few years ago. It's called thankyouteachers.com, in which I'm asking the community to come in with like low-cost car repairs, home, elder care, babysitting services, things that they need. And I would like to see us actually build houses and let them live in those houses in the neighborhoods that we want more teachers in. and with the low cost, let's say maybe a 1% loan or something really outrageously low, and get them in there. But personally, what I'm doing is I'm putting my money right up. I'm not taking any salary. I'm not taking the salary, the technology, or the expense, and I'm donating it back to the schools. And I'm hoping the rest of the board will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Elise Dashew.
My children are both CMS students, and their teachers do work extra jobs. Most of their teachers work extra jobs, and I see the stress that puts on them. This is a state funding issue, and it's also a local funding issue. We are losing our teachers to South Carolina and to surrounding districts because of pay. So we have got to do a better job with that. I have a real track record of advocating successfully for challenges like these. And at the same time, there are things that we can do within CMS to create alternative ways to pay certain teachers more when they are coaching their, we have veteran, extremely qualified teachers who coach their peers, and then we can offer more pay to those teachers. So those are some things we can work on in the meantime while we're advocating to the state and to the county commission.
Thank you. And your reply, Erica Ellis Stewart.
Currently, we have teachers making $10,000 to $12,000 less than the national average. We need to make a commitment to, at a minimum, get teachers to the national average in Mecklenburg County and across the state. We will have to lobby our folks in the General Assembly as well as the local county commission to increase the supplement. But beyond the fact that teachers are working 2 and 3 jobs, we employ 9,000 teachers in this community and actually have up to 60% of them who qualify for food stamps, who qualify for Medicaid and other services. We have to return dignity back to this profession, but also make sure that we're paying them a livable wage. We need to focus on other support systems such as mentoring for teachers, as well as professional development that really helps them with their pedagogy and their practice in the classroom. We have to make sure that teachers begin to see Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools as an educational destination for them.
Thank you. Our next question is, are equitable resources, including quality teachers, facilities, and equipment, available in all CMS schools? If not, how would you rectify that? Again, the question is, are equitable resources, including quality teachers, facilities, and equipment, available in all CMS schools? If not, how would you rectify that? And we go to Mary McCray for your reply.
Jeff, one of the things that we have worked on is making sure that our schools have an equitable distribution of teachers. As far as other materials, I would say no. We still need to do a better job even with our teachers. One of the things we have to look at is making sure we have the know-how, the knowledge of who's in a building, what they are capable of moving the needle with the students that they're working with, if those teachers have the resources and materials that they need to get their jobs done. And right now, we don't have access to that. One of the things that we are working on is thinking about ways that, as a board, not necessarily going back to the equity committee, but looking at what we have in every one of our schools and what we'd like to see in those school buildings.
Thank you, Ms. McCray. Jeremy Stevenson.
Yes, as Ms. McCray just said, I've heard Ann Clark speak in significant detail on her talent management systems to put the brightest and strongest teachers where they're absolutely needed. You don't use Mariano Rivera against the one below the Mendoza line, so to speak. And so I think Ann Clark is doing a great job on talent management. And on the facilities side, we have problems with facilities going back to the bond issue. My home school, Lansdowne, was built in 1956, as was Bruns Academy. And if you walk through those schools, there are deficient facilities all across our county. To the extent many of our schools rely upon PTA, PTO things, that does become a significant issue in the communities of poverty. And I think we can all focus, laser-like, on how we can bring the resources that those communities need from outside the community.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Angela Ambrose, your reply.
Will you repeat the question for me?
Question is, are equitable resources, including quality teachers, facilities, and equipment, available in all CMS schools? If not, how would you rectify it?
Well, absolutely not. They're not equal across the board. Again, some of those things, I think we can think out of the box on ways to help get the schools up and running. Maybe we offer discounts to some of those developers that I said tax, or contribute to CMS schools, maybe we ask them to come in and fix up some of our schools as a tax incentive or a discount to them. I think we've got to approach this on different ways. Again, reaching out to the communities to see what the schools lack and seeing where we can get some of those businesses that surround the community, see if we can get them to contribute to the schools or that facility that's lacking. I think that we're always going to have like Jeremy said, the PTAs are different. I mean, especially a PTA in South Park is going to be able to raise more funds for the school than a PTA in the inner city. So I think that we need to look at those communities and look at the schools that are truly lacking and figure out ways that we can get outside sources to help pick up the tab.
Thank you, Ms. Ambrose. Janine Bryant, your reply.
So equity and equitable distribution, I think, has been used as a buzzword, but inherent in this question is the possibility that all the schools might possibly be equal. The reality is that they're not, and that's not only for teachers and textbooks and resources, it's also in literally what the buildings look like and feel like. We no longer use the free and reduced lunch numbers to help us calculate the data. So I think we have to go back to some type of equity report. We have to have some real tangible knowledge about how long the building has been open, when were their last updates, technology, teachers, demographics, because when we get that tangible level of information, we can become more transparent about how we're going to fix that problem and fix the levels of equity at our schools. I think another key portion of that is to think about what's available and how we equitably distribute that. So not only knowing and transparently knowing all the resources that are available, but then how do we distribute them with an eye towards making sure every student has what they need to succeed. At an at-large race, we should be thinking about the entire district and every student in the county.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. And again, the question, are equitable resources, including quality teachers, facilities, and equipment available in all CMS schools? If not, how would you rectify that? And we go to Larry Baumgartner.
Actually, if you notice, well, you probably don't know, but I'm a numbers person, okay? I have to be. Everybody that is successful has to actually know what the numbers are, where they're going, where they should go, whatever. That being said, we do have a problem. We have $4,000 that's going to the suburban schools per student in funding, and then we have 12 or more thousand in the urban schools. And I kind of wonder about the many talents that we've actually killed by doing that out in the suburbs. As far as overcrowded classes, they're all in the suburbs. There are 35 or more students in a class, they're all in the suburbs. So when we start talking about these numbers, please, I swear to you, I'm not trying to be mean, folks, when I say this. Get the real numbers, know what they actually are, and then go and vote please.
All right, thank you, Mr. We have a challenge from Erica Bryant.
Janine Bryant.
Oh, sorry.
You just said get the real numbers. Could you please quote any sources from which you are telling us for per pupil expenditure and the sources for the district, and maybe even the definition
sure,
of
yeah,
rural
absolutely.
and urban?
CMS numbers, if you care to, yeah. I analyze everything. I
Could you
analyze
tell me
the budget.
the exact source that you're using? For
The
that
CMS
number?
budget, yes.
And your definition of urban and rural.
The numbers, it actually is spread out on the actual schools themselves. What's
Right.
being spent and the number of students there. You see what I'm saying?
I'm
You have a
asking
budget. You have a budget.
At this point, I'm going to have
CMS
to
budget.
interrupt you. Yes.
CMS budget. I'm sorry, but it's CMS budget.
Okay, we're going to move on with Elise Dashu's reply. Are equitable resources, including quality teachers, facilities, and equipment, available in all CMS schools? If not, how would you rectify that? Elise Dashu.
So regarding teachers, we have a system currently of assigning additional staff to schools based on poverty levels, and we have evidence that this is effective. So I support continuing that, and that's called weighted student staffing. So I support weighted student staffing. As far as resources, we need to have a conversation about what resources we're tracking, how we measure these resources, so that we can have a clear view of what resources are in our schools and what impact they're having. So we do need to have that conversation.
All right, thank you. Erica Ellis Stewart, your reply.
I think that we do have an issue with equity in our district, and one of the things that's important to me is that we inspect what we expect. If we expect that things will be equitably distributed, we need to have a process for that. To that extent, I am working with the superintendent and our chief accountability officer to talk about bringing back the equity report so that we can measure, and we'll have a set of metrics to know without a shadow of a doubt, are we distributing our resources equitably? I think that in addition to that, we have to look across the district and say, are students being exposed to the same levels of rigor and to the same levels of high expectation? And currently that's not the case, so we have to work on that as well. And then we have to make sure that in our neediest schools, that those students have access to teachers who have experience, who have the ability to move the needle on student achievement.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Stewart. Levester Flowers, your reply?
Thank you. No to both questions, and I do agree with my colleague, Ms. Deshu, about the staff and the strategic staffing that can assist in that area. Also, I think accountability. I think we need to have a strategic planning team in place that deals with these sensitive issues. West Charlotte hasn't had a new gym in 50-plus years. The football stadium bleachers are about to fall apart. And yesterday I reported in the Charlotte Observer that CMS may be looking at spending $12 million for possibly building a K-8 school on the Eastland Mall property. Before you go over there and spend $12 million, you might want to renovate the gym at West Charlotte and some of the inner city schools. That's where strategic staffing and planning comes into play. We need that desperately.
All right, and we have a challenge from Ms. McCrae.
Mr. Flowers, do you know the number of students that currently reside outside of the school building at Albemarle Road Elementary that the new K-8 school is going to encompass, that was being talked about in the newspaper? Do you know the numbers?
I don't know the numbers exactly, but I do know that when they actually closed 10 schools 5 years ago and went to a K-8 format in some of the schools, according to recent reports in the Charlotte Observer, a lot of those schools are failing. If we're going to do the same thing, we're going to get the still failing results with this K-8 template that's being used with CMS schools.
All right, do we have any other challenges? All right, we do have another challenge from Ms. McCrae.
Mr. Flowers, you did not address my question. My question was, if you don't know, have you visited Albemarle Road Elementary School to see the overcrowdedness that currently is there at that school?
Well, I haven't visited, but this is why I'm talking about magnet schools and the transformation and the reorganization of the school system through innovative and creative magnets. If we do that, then we may have some relief with the overcrowding. But I'm a strong advocate. These K-8 configurations have been proven and reported in the Charlotte Observer 2 Sundays ago as not being effective, particularly for large clusters of students of color. This money needs to be sent to revitalize and re-enhance schools that are failing, that physically, like Mr.
All right, and I
Stevens has advocated.
unfortunately have to cut you off, Mr. Flowers, on
Thank
that.
you.
Any other challenges before we proceed? Our next question will then be, support has been expressed for building workforce housing on excess land around and owned by CMS to promote diversity in the school. Would you support such a plan, yes or no? So once again, the question is, support has been expressed for building workforce housing on excess land around and owned by CMS to promote diversity in the school. Would you support such a plan, yes or no? And we will go to Angela Ambrose.
Absolutely. As a real estate broker, I am currently out here in the city and a lot of different neighborhoods around the city of Charlotte. Workforce housing is absolutely a priority. We should have been doing this 5 years ago. Walter G. Byers is an example of a school that has a lot of homeless children. You have a shelter there, but you have vacant land that the city owns sitting right there in that neighborhood. That is a perfect example of where workforce housing can be needed to help support that school. I am a proponent of workforce housing throughout Charlotte. I think that is a key that CMS desperately needs to help pull those kids out of where they are. When their parents don't have stable housing, it's hard to work with their kids. I'm a big promoter of parental involvement. That's part of my platform. But parents, when they don't have stable housing and they don't have the ability to even be able to nurture their kids, to be able to go over their homework because they're simply in an environment that's just not conducive for that. So Charlotte definitely needs to build more workforce housing.
Thank you, Ms. Ambrose. Janine Bryant, your reply.
Yes. We were ranked in Charlotte as 50th for social mobility as a city, and everyone was up in arms about that, and recently saw a report about the tale of two Charlottes. And the reality is providing affordable and workforce housing will actually impact the not only the narrative that we talk about for Charlotte, but ultimately the outcomes for our students. It's going to impact their graduation rates. It's going to impact their stability. It's going to impact their ability to have access to excellent schools. We should think about workforce housing as a reflection of our future and a reflection of providing templates for affordable living across the county.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Larry Baumgartner, your reply.
I was an original citizen volunteer for Gang of One. That was before we knew we had gangs in Charlotte, or before we acknowledged we had gangs in Charlotte. And one of the most unique things is it amazed me how I would go and talk to people through bars that had barred themselves into their house. Not the criminals outside, but the good people inside the house having to stay behind bars. And we've got a problem here. And why we don't actually focus on it, and why we don't actually say crime is the biggest problem we have. And you can build all you want to. You can do all the nice things. You can build the nice fountain out in the middle of the square, whatever, right in a neighborhood that's not going to. We need to work on some things in Charlotte.
Thank you, Larry Baumgartner. We have a challenge from
I have a
Ms.
question,
Ambrose.
Mr. Brown. When you say crime, are you saying that the address crime is more of an issue than providing workforce housing? Because I hear you say, well, we had to address crime, but I'm trying to figure out how that ties
we
into
can
the
get into minutia of saying, okay, is this important, that important? The fact of the matter is, folks, I've mentored hundreds of kids, all right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are a lot smarter than me. And I'm amazed how the kids that actually made it, why they made it, is because they stayed the right path, they went the right way. That was it. I can tell you right now, if I lived in some of these neighborhoods, folks, I would join a gang, okay? I've been down at 2:30 in the morning in these neighborhoods. I've seen gangs. I know what they provide: protection, they provide family, and they provide employment. So until we start working on the whole problem, we're going to actually keep having this problem.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgartner. Any other challenges?
I have a question.
We have another challenge from Ms. Ambrose.
I would like to say, as a community, living in a neighborhood that was considered high crime, one of the worst high crime neighborhoods in Charlotte, what I saw in those neighborhoods and what I still see today is children with lack of housing. A lot of the inner city is becoming gentrified day by day. And so when you say crime, that is not our number one issue. I think the problem is how we keep kids out of crime is simply provide them housing, provide them stability. When you don't have stable housing and workforce housing, these kids are pushed from neighborhood to neighborhood to neighborhood, and then maybe that's what introduces them to a lot of a crime. But I think that the core of what we need here and at the core and the roots of CMS is that we have got to connect educational policy and housing policy.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ambrose. Any other challenges before we move forward?
Yeah, could I answer? I'm sorry.
If you would like to use another challenge.
Challenge,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
I totally agree because, down in Optimus Park, Belmont, the Belmont community, I actually hired private security, the same people that patrolled out at out at the gated areas of Charlotte. I hired them to come down for a summer and handle Belmont and Optimus Park. UNC did a study on it. Crime went down that year. It's something simple like that. Now, after that, you know what happened recently over there? Some people that were doing the gentrification, as you say, some guy came up to him, wanted $1. He didn't give it to him. He shot him in the eye, killed him.
Okay.
And his wife watched that. I mean, so
Mr. Baumgartner,
we
you're
want to
out.
help all.
Thank you.
Can I?
Would you like to use another
I
challenge?
would. I
Yes.
would.
All right.
To answer your question,
This is
Ron,
your last one.
I know. Oh, dog, I didn't know that. Well, you talked about the Belmont community. I am very active in the Belmont community. I'm familiar with the Belmont Community Neighborhood Association group, and I actually know the family that you're talking about. Again, a lot of that, that's not to argue that there isn't situations, but we are on the street. We work hard in the communities. We have, gentrification is an issue, but there are a lot of people who are proud to live in those neighborhoods, and I'm trying to find a way to promote more housing so people who aren't being forced out of those neighborhoods can continue to invest in their communities. So when you talk about that situation was one, it happens all over Charlotte, right? But it gets a lot more
out of time,
attention when
Ms.
it happens in
Ambrose.
Belmont.
All right, let me just say it like this: $1 million views, folks. If you saw, I've stood there and looked downtown Charlotte thinking, if they put condos up here, this kind of thing, there's only one reason that's keeping them out from down there, keeping people from investing down there. And you tell me what that problem is.
Oh, okay. And with that, just so you know, Ms. Ambrose and Mr. Baumgartner, you're now out of challenges. So the question on the table is, support has been expressed for building workforce housing on excess land around and owned by CMS to promote diversity in the school. Would you support such a plan, yes or no? And we go back to Elise Dashu for your reply.
Yes, I would, particularly for our CMS teachers and other CMS employees, 59% of whom do not make a living wage. Now, the challenge is I serve as the co-chair of the CMS Bond Oversight Committee, and so I keep a real close eye on the process of acquiring land and building schools with bond funds. And so I can see that the challenge is that we do not have a lot of land to build workforce housing on, let alone to build schools on. So that's going to be our challenge going forward, but it is a great concept.
All right, thank you, Ms. Dashew. Ms. Erica Ellis Stewart, your reply.
I would support the building of workforce housing near and around CMS properties. We're actually now looking at all of our surplus land, trying to determine if we can sell it to bring in money so we can renovate schools or build new schools. But I would add to the table looking at workforce housing. I think the other piece of it is we need to find out if we can offer housing assistance like we do for firefighters and police officers to teachers, because many of the teachers are living paycheck to paycheck, and being able to afford housing is a challenge for them. I think the other thing that we need to do is look at the number of homeless children. We have over 5,000 homeless children in our school system, but beyond that 5,000, we have hundreds of children who are living in hotels, extended stay situations, or moving from relative to relative, and they don't have that stable housing. So we need to look at a number of things to do to make sure that housing around the schools can add to diversity.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis Stewart. Mr. Lester Flowers, your reply.
I also agree with the concept of utilizing this land for workforce houses, particularly for janitors, cafeteria workers, and bus drivers, many of whom make less than $12 an hour. This is not a living wage. These people are getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning, the bus drivers. They need affordable houses supplemented in this manner. And when appropriate and when financially feasible, in line with budgetary constraints, I would advocate for that initiative.
All right, thank you. Ms. McRae.
Yes, I would support it, especially not only for our teachers, but also for our other employees in the district. But just as Ms. Dashew said, that, a lot of this land is really we're not able to build much on it. Otherwise, we'd be building schools on it if we could. But it would have to be land that is not been dumped on, land that is feasible for housing so that the value would increase with the years rather than decreasing.
All right, thank you, Ms. McRae. Jeremy Stevenson.
Thank you. I agree with absolutely what Elise and Mary just said, but I think this goes directly to the question of support has been expressed. I think there's a lot of misinformation in the community, and I'm a big advocate of open and transparent conversations. And we've got to remember the city also several years ago had an incentive for developers to develop low-income housing. And as they look back on that, that has not worked out very well. I don't think CMS should be in the business of building housing themselves. And if we're going to ask the developers to do this, that could be a very tricky issue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Do we have a challenge? Okay, we do not have a challenge.
I don't have a challenge.
The challenge for him or something?
She's out of challenges.
Oh, darn. I'm out of challenges too.
Our next question is, at present, the CMS solution for creating a more diverse student body seems to be magnet programs. Such programs have often resulted in active parents opting out of high-need schools for their children, while the neediest children are left more isolated than ever. What steps would you take to assure that any new assignment plan would not have this result? So once again, that's a long question, so here we go. At present, the CMS solution to creating a more diverse student body seems to be magnet programs. Such programs have often resulted in active parents opting out of high-needs schools for their children, while the neediest children are left more isolated than ever. What steps would you take to assure that any new assignment plan would not have this result? And Jeremy Stevenson, we'll go to you for your reply first.
Thank you very much. I believe a significant part of this is populating magnets around the county. There are no magnets south of the county. I don't believe partial magnets are the solution either. I attended a large and diverse public school, and the magnet students are significantly separated from the neighborhood students. I would ask Ms. Dashew, she had an opportunity to send her children to a neighborhood school and instead sent them to a magnet. I myself am facing a similar decision, and that's a very difficult decision for a parent.
All right.
Is that a challenge, or?
If you would like to accept that as a challenge, that is your option.
I'll raise my card.
Okay. My My son attends McClintock Middle School as a neighborhood student. McClintock is a partial magnet where the programming is available for all of the students, neighborhood and magnet. So my son is there as a neighborhood student, but he is participating in the same STEAM robotics programming that the magnet students are participating in.
So
Would you like to use a challenge?
I would. It's my understanding you are zoned for Rama Road Elementary and your children did not attend that neighborhood school. Is that correct?
That's correct. My children attended for elementary school World Languages Magnet, which was a tremendous opportunity for them, and we are just blessed to have an opportunity like that in our district. So my children attended that. My son is at McClintock for middle school, and my daughter is at a partial magnet for high school, South Mecklenburg High School, as a World Languages student.
All right, we will continue with the candidate responses, and we will go to Angela Ambrose.
As the mother of two young children, my daughter, she just started kindergarten at Shamrock Gardens. It's a partial magnet school, and it's actually not my neighborhood school. I sought that partial magnet. It's also a Title I school as well, out. At Shamrock Gardens, every child is exposed to the magnet as well. So when I say partial magnets, the model that I would like to see is the model that's used at Shamrock Gardens, where every child that goes to the school is exposed to that magnet, but parents also, and people who live in the neighborhood also maintain the right to go to that school because it's their neighborhood school. And I think that if you put partial magnets into the schools, you'll attract some of those parents, and that's that natural diversity that I think that will occur in a lot of these schools. If you put a highly competitive magnet in there, give every kid an opportunity to be exposed to that magnet, but also attract some of these parents who otherwise would not come into the school, would be a perfect example. But Shamrock Gardens is a perfect example for that.
All right, thank you. Let's see here, Janine Bryant.
Thank you. I firmly think that we have to focus on partial magnets as a solution, but we also have to be very cognizant that unless we have some kind of equitable distribution of resources across all schools and have some kind of attractor at all schools, we actually could be doing a disservice to students because we won't be serving all schools with some type of attractor. The partial magnet, I think, serves multiple purposes. And to Ms. Ambrose's point, it serves as an attractor to the community, but it also gives parents who live locally an opportunity to be very active at that school, and the parents that select and opt into that school will also be active because they have opted in. So it's a more of a win-win situation. However, I am aware that many parents see the cultivation of more magnets is actually possibly disrupting their own student experience. So I think we really have to think holistically about the entire district from north to south and think about the distance that we place these magnets in proximity to schools and neighborhoods to make sure that we're serving everyone.
Janine Bryant, thank you. Larry Baumgartner, your reply.
I'm open to anything that works. If you were to prove to me that, having pony rides at lunchtime for the kids, I'd be building stables at all the schools. The thing is, we actually have to ask ourselves, your kids may know a lot about, the climate change, that kind of thing, but I want you to go home and ask your kids, do they know about helium-3? Helium-3. Everybody says, well, wait a minute, what is this? That's, check it. Check your kids. If they don't know that, then you need to vote for me because I'm going to make sure that we go past all this, start doing education as the only thing in school, and anything that works, I'm open for it.
All right, thank you. Elise Dashu.
We need all of our children to attend good, strong schools. So we need our neighborhood schools to be strong, and we need strong magnet offerings too. So to be a successful system in today's environment with charters proliferating, we need both to be strong, and both can be strong. You don't have to have one canceling out the other. And I know that from real world experience because my children have attended both neighborhood schools and magnet schools, and we've had the best of both worlds.
Thank you. Erica Ellis Stewart, your reply?
Will you repeat the question?
It's a long question, so yes. At present, the CMS solution to creating a more diverse student body seems to be magnet programs. Such programs have often resulted in active parents opting out of high-need schools for their children, while the neediest children are left more isolated than ever. What steps would you take to assure that any new assignment plan would not have this result?
Well, I think this is a question that goes beyond student assignment. We all have to start asking the very personal question of would I send my child or grandchild or niece or nephew to that school? And if the answer is no, we have to look at the factors that are contributing to that. Are there behavioral and cultural issues at the school? Is there a lack of access to rigor and expectations? And if so, we need to solve for those with a sense of urgency to make sure that we can turn every school in the district into a school of excellence. Right now, there are families who feel like they don't have a choice with their assigned school, and they don't see that assigned school as a viable educational option, and we have to change that. And I don't think you stop an expansion of the magnet program. I think both types of education are valuable for our community, and we have to offer choice to families. I do support magnet schools. I was a magnet parent for 16 years, but I know the value of having strong neighborhood schools, and we have to have a sense of urgency about improving those.
All right, thank you. Levester Flowers?
Thank you. If CMS follows the recommendations of Magnet Schools of America, and Superintendent Clark has rolled out some of those initiatives, I think a couple of board meetings ago, one of the things was the busing, the strategic busing for kids that are needy, make sure that they have buses available, accessibility, as well as keeping the bus stops. We are America. We put a man on the moon. We found water on Mars. If we get a director of transportation here to address these issues, we can solve the busing problem. Also, we need stronger neighborhood schools. Once parents opt out of magnet schools, of neighborhood schools, I should say, and leave that seat available, then other kids can transition in. So the whole concept can work, but we got to be innovative and creative.
All right, thank you, Mr. Flowers. Mary McRae, your reply.
I do agree with the expansion of our magnet programs, and for one main reason. We have a gap as to what students are attending our magnet schools. And two groups we are not seeing taking advantage of this. And these are our ELL, our English language learners, and our exceptional children who are on the other end of the spectrum. So just trying to empower those parents to bring their kids and get them into our magnet programs, because even though they may have a disability, they still can do some of these things that are happening in some of our magnet programs. And I want those two groups of parents to really get involved with our magnet programs.
Mary McRae, thank you. Our next question is, what constitutes an effective and successful school district to you? Actually, I'm being told we're out of time, so we're now going to shift to closing comments. So let's begin with Angela Ambrose with your 30-second statement.
Again, my name is Angela Ambrose, and again, I'm coming to this election just so I can kind of raise awareness and have CMS think differently. I think one of the things at the school that my children go to, the motto is think differently, do differently, be different. And I think that that's what CMS do. They ought to listen to the voice of the community. If you elect me, I'm going to be there, and I'm going to have that voice of the community here at CMS.
Janine Bryant.
I'm Janine Bryant, your candidate for school board at large. I'm happy to represent both parents and community members, but also to think about the value that our teachers bring to the school district. As a former school teacher for kindergarten, I'm fully aware of all of the challenges. I think our parents need to be seen as partners, our teachers should be seen as leaders, and our students should be supported across the board. I'm looking forward to representing you on the school board, and I know that together we can do this.
Thank you, Ms. Bryant. Larry Bumgarner.
Yes, I was one of the original. They bused us from Myers Park to West Charlotte. We ended up loving West Charlotte. It worked back then. The reason it worked is we had 85% white students. Today we have 30% white students in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. So we do have a problem there. So what I'm asking you to do is, look, I'm an independent. I'm not going to be party politics into this thing. I'm going to work for your kids, and go to my website, Make Lives Matter. That's makelivesmatter.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry Bumgarner. Elise Dashew.
So I'm Elise Dashew. My website is dashewforschoolboard.com. I have a long history of fighting tenaciously for our students and our teachers and our schools. I have led the charge to roll back budget cuts and save hundreds of teacher jobs, to build new schools to relieve overcrowding, to get a full-time nurse into every school. I have a real track record to do the things that we need to do right now for the children of our community. I have a passion for bringing people around the table to solve the issues that we face with reasonable solutions.
Okay, I need to cut you off. I'm sorry. And we go to Erica Ellis Stewart for your response.
My name is Erica Ellis Stewart. I currently serve you on the Board of Education, and it's been my pleasure to do so for the last 4 years. For the past 20 years, I've been an advocate for families and children in this community, and I'm willing to roll up my sleeves, ask the tough questions, and do the hard work to make sure that everything that we're doing is in the best interest of students. I ask for your support. I thank you for your past support, and I ask you to vote Erica Ellis Stewart during early voting and on November 3rd. My website is www.erica4cmsboard.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Levester Flowers.
Thank you so much. I believe in expansion of new and innovative magnet programs, building stronger neighborhood schools, no busing needed or required in any pupil assignment template. And if you vote for me, I will be sensitive and attentive to the needs of all parents and students, all 145,000, irregardless of race or economic status. We can become one CMS united. Vote Levester Flowers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Mary McCrae.
Hi, I'm Mary McCrae, and I am seeking re-election to the Board of Education at large. I bring to the board my hat as an educator for 34 years, and also my expertise when it comes to relating to the voiceless. I have been that voice. I want to continue to be that voice for those persons who feel like they don't have an opportunity to talk in this district. I seek re-election, and hopefully with your support, I will be there again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary McCrae. Jeremy Stevenson.
Thank you. My name is Jeremy Stevenson. I come from a family of teachers. My mom, my dad, my aunt, my uncle, my sister. I'm an Eagle Scout, and those values remain an important part of who I am. For the last 8 years, I've volunteered as a guardian ad litem. I have a 4-year-old girl, Hazel, who will be in the public schools for a long time. And there's a reason that 29 elected officials from around our county have formally endorsed me, because they believe that I am the only candidate who can represent this entire county, because it is a county school district, not a city school district. Please vote for me.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. And I do want to remind you, sorry, we can't take any challenges at this point. We do have a 9th candidate, Amelia Stinson-Wesley, who was unable to join us today due to an unanticipated illness. Again, thank you, candidates, for taking part in this debate, the Mecklenburg County Board of Election at-large debate. Once again, we want to remind you there are 9 candidates and there are 3 open seats. This is a nonpartisan race. For information about the election, you can go to pbscharlotte.org or the League of Women Voters of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Their website is goleaguego.org. We want to remind you to vote in the general election this Tuesday. The polls will be open from 6:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m., and you must vote at your assigned polling location, which is found on your voter registration card. Thank you for watching, and thank you again, candidates.